Hello, nerds! Nerds for humanity. Just wanted to do a quick video today about Andrew Yang's proposals around criminal justice reform. Given the timely nature of today's events, it's always helpful to look at what the Yang 2020 campaign had been proposing. Thank you, Iowa and New Hampshire, for picking Pete Buttigieg to be our nominee. It is a little crazy to think about the fact that we could have had Yang, but thank you to the ultimate wisdom of the great Democrats of Iowa for recommending that we go with Pete Buttigieg instead. Any rate, let's look at the specific policies that Yang had in 2020 because I suspect they may be relevant even in 2024, sadly. So I'm going to look at three: mass incarceration, cameras for cops, and pretrial cash bail. So let's start with the mass incarceration. So let's look at reducing mass incarceration. He starts out with explaining the problem of America imprisoning a high percentage of citizens. Now, we actually did a Nerds for Humanity video about that. I'll link below around criminal justice statistics. And he talks about mandatory minimum laws, war on drugs, and misguided policies that have led to a glut of Americans behind bars. And of course, there's reference to universal basic income, but there's also some more specific things around criminal justice, like reviewing the current minimum laws to bring them in line with what's effective, shifting federal drug policy away from punishment and towards treatment, ending the use of for-profit private prisons, funding programs targeted at reducing recidivism and increasing integration, pushing for reconsideration of the harshness of our felony laws, including investigation into any civil rights issues raised by disproportionate of minorities convicted of crimes. So the big focus is reducing mass incarceration. The argument is that this is one of the biggest civil rights issues of our time and needs to be addressed. And then he wraps up this section with the specifics of, as president, I will end the use of private prisons, shift drug policy away from punishment, invest money to innovate prison programs to decrease recidivism, invest money to support businesses that hire felons who've served their terms, push to reconsider harsh felony laws preventing those who've served from reintegration, identify non-violent drug offenders for probation, and implement UBI, which will decrease the incentives for criminality and improve the functioning of individuals and communities. You know, that last point's kind of a huge one. If people had $12,000 a year of basic income and they would lose it if they committed a crime and were convicted of it and had to go to prison, that would be probably the biggest incentive not to go to prison that we've ever seen. All right, the next policy is every cop gets a camera. He starts off with a reference to a study showing a reduction of the rate of use of force of 60% and 88% reduction in complaints when body cameras are used by police. So part of the problem is that there are 18,000 different local law enforcement agencies. Everyone has their own budget, leadership, and regulations. So the argument here is that nationally, there could be a way to unify and standardize this. It would cost about $400 million. Now that might seem like a big expenditure, but when you think about the U.S. federal budget being almost $5 trillion, that would be something like 0.008% of the total budget. In fact, he goes on to explain that 400 to 1,000 Americans get shot and killed by police. It is not a statistic that is clearly kept. The other statistic that's interesting here is that it would save police and local municipalities from legal settlements. The NYPD spent $136 million on legal settlements for police misconduct in 2010 alone. So the argument would be if we had cameras back then, there probably would be fewer complaints, less misconduct, and fewer legal settlements. So what would President Yang do? He would authorize federal funding to pay for a body camera for every officer in every police department in the country. He would have the DOJ compile accurate composite measurements, including from private sources of police-related incidents. So if you can't track it, you can't manage it. If you can't manage it, you can't fix it. Provide federal funding for training of local police officers in the latest nonviolent techniques. Encourage community-based policing. Reward departments for a combination of low complaints and continued efficacy. Reestablish the ban on distributing surplus unnecessary military gear to police departments and invest in new non-lethal weaponry that can be used to de-escalate conflicts. Again, this is super relevant today. This is stuff that Andrew Yang was proposing all last year. To all those Democrats who supported other primary candidates, I wish you didn't do that. And next, decreasing pretrial cash bail. So he starts off by talking about, hey, this is a country where you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But the problem is you're often thrown in jail because you can't afford to post bail until and wait for your trial. He then goes on to explain that it costs $80 billion a year in incarceration costs and loss of productivity. It puts pressure on people to take plea agreements even when they may not have committed a crime. And bail determinations are very subjective, with individuals receiving very different bail amounts for the same crime. Lastly, and probably most importantly, the inability to pay cash bail obviously falls most frequently on poor people. And so this results in lower income people losing their jobs, causing immediate economic distress. It's another pressure towards accepting a plea deal. Maybe you didn't even do it, but you just need to kind of move on, and causing the long-term poverty cycle, which then can rob them of future opportunities and reduces the incentive to constructively participate in society. He then goes on to say that states that have reformed their bail systems to minimize cash bail have seen very high levels of trial attendance with very low levels of crime while awaiting trial. So what would a President Yang do? 1, work with states to decrease their reliance on cash bail, providing assistance and grants for various programs to increase trial attendance without the need to incarcerate them ahead of conviction, and implement a federal program for pre-trial services that would be made available to states, such as a text message system to remind individuals of their upcoming court dates and ensure court attendance. Next, I just want to say thank you to members of this channel who support this content. Obviously, I like to go into the details and very specific things, and I do a lot of data and long-form interviews, which isn't super interesting to all of America, but there is a small but loyal group of nerds for humanity that support this content, including Kristen Slevin, our highest level member. We also have Chris, Laura, Fat, JM, Sap, and V, our VP level. At the hardcore level, we have Jekalago, Phoenix, Koa, Landline, DK, Tracy, David, Adrian, Jim, Chad, and Mike. And at the verified entry level, but still super supportive and appreciate it, we have Nell, Elizabeth, Soldier, Emerald, Mercy Ann, Miles, Verily, Doris, Shake and Make, Mick, Sophia, Jadwiga, Gail, James, Hitachi, Your Mommin, Peter Knight, Arez, Albert, Brandon, Yes, Sugar Sweet, Brian, Lisa, and Sydney. And here's some merch if you're interested. Link in the description to our merch store. Lots of very tasteful designs. I tried to make it so that you would actually want to wear it. And some that are humorous, like I have the data. Talk nerdy to me. Show me the data. And then there's stuff that's really just very super minimalist and kind of vintage looking, like this guy. If you found this content useful and you want more people to discover the facts about Andrew Yang, get ready for 2024 support, learn more about important issues of the day, policy conversations, please like in the comments below. Be curious if you have other topics you want me to cover. And please share it out as well. And if you listen to podcasts, subscribe to us in wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're an Apple Podcast person, hook us up with a review. See you later. Goodbye, nerds.